Welcome to the Big Biz Show. Taking care of business. You want fast-talking, hard-hitting discussions on business and finance? Maybe with a barroom slant and some really salty peanuts? We're not counting calories. We're counting cash. Before we get to the man with the financial plan, meet the money team. Costa, Mary, and Greg. Now, Captain Finance himself, Sully.
What is Captain Finance nonsense?
Captain Finance. Are you kidding?
What's happening? We're changing
PF for short.
Great to have you along today. Big Biz Show, bigbizshow.com. Mary and Greg and myself and Mike, another bowl of Funyuns, Costa. You know, I would love to take Devin and Howie out of nowhere while Mike is here at the studio, a visit to Mike's house with his wife giving a tour of what is in
the pantry.
What is in that pantry. I think that would be a fantastic thing. Speaking of Howie Font, he joins us here today, of course, from New York. Great to have you along. And we were talking last time with Howie about that emergency fund. You ever go home and do any thinking about that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Greg?
Got some hundred bills under the mattress now.
Yeah.
Doesn't care.
Yeah.
It's a safe place for him too.
Yeah,
mattress, right in the mattress.
Well, listen though, but you have to.
Right
If something went south again and you couldn't get the ATM, you got to keep a little cash at home.
Oh, for sure. Small bills too, I'm told.
I hear you're supposed to keep it like right on. Like, don't put it in the bedroom in the closet.
Right.
You're supposed to put it like right out there in front next to the frickin' Cheez-Its. You know, like just set it there It needs to be obvious by its, what is it called? It's hidden in plain sight.
Okay. My daughter got
like the old coffee can trick.
Yeah, my daughter got it.
I'm talking about literally like see this picture here?
Yeah.
Yeah, look at this little decorative box with $1,000 in it.
So
Okay.
Lex,
Right?
Last year, Lexi got a piggy bank, but it's a glass jar with, it only goes one way in. You can't get anything out until you break it.
Well, it's piggy bank.
Yes, but I mean,
Hence
piggy bank,
the
you
piggy
pull
bank.
it out the bottom. You didn't have to break it.
Oh, they had that on the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of
Do you
them.
guys remember that? Well, you don't because you didn't grow up in town. But we used to go to Mexico. And at the border, they always sell these ceramic piggy banks.
Oh, yeah.
But there was the monkey on the surfboard.
Oh, of course, the surfing monkey.
Do you have that?
I had that.
I was going to get you one for Christmas.
No, of
All right, very
course.
good. I want to talk about something really weird that Howie brought up, and this
dear.
just bothers me, Howie, that you brought this up. That Howie sends me an email that says this: to maintain a population, you need a replacement rate of 2 to 1 people per couple, 2.1 people per couple, and that accounts for the deaths of those without children. Thanks for bringing up such a happy subject there, Howie. What does this have to do with money or business?
Yeah.
This has real economic effects. I thought it'd be interesting.
right.
I mean, no, I bring it up because the U.S. Birth rate declined again. We're in the 1.6, 0.7 range right now, and like you said, it's 2.1 people per couple need to be created. So yeah, the 0.1 is for all the not happy stuff. But the poster child for this is Japan. Their rate is only 1.2, so they're not even replacing their own parents.
Well, so what is the problem with the shrinking population? That sounds like a country like Japan. Seems like it would, or China would help, with social programs and just the way life goes. It ebbs and flows, like the Elliott Wave principle. Sometimes populations are high, sometimes they're low, and of course, right now with the economic condition of Japan, probably can't hurt to cull the herd naturally to see if there's what's happening. What's happening? Why is it bad to have a shrinking population?
Yeah, so the problem is populations historically have only really gone in one direction, up. So Korea, Japan, a couple other places are the first maybe of a new wave of shrinking populations. So it's dangerous because economic output falls. Japan for the last 10 years, for example, has only had 0.5% growth, where we only consider ourselves healthy if GDP in the U.S. is growing between 2 and 3%.
So there's less people to make stuff, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, very simply, less people, less stuff, total tonnage. Now, per capita, Japan's doing fine, but, when the total tonnage, if that happened to the U.S., there'd be a serious problem because we rely on our size to maintain our dominance.
All right, stay there. I got questions about this.
Yep.
Because Greg and I think less is more. Big Biz Show, bigbizshow.com. Don't go anywhere. We'll see you in a second. Big Biz Show. We're talking about diminishing populations, how they affect the economy. Howie Font, our resident analyst here on the Big Biz Show, will be joining us back. You had an interesting point, though.
Well, thank you.
Well,
it happens every once in a while.
Clock.
What is the date?
Broken clocks, right?
Let's mark this date.
So what is your philosophy on this?
Well, the philosophy is if our population doesn't continue to grow, then we're going to have trouble with programs like Social Security because nobody is working to fund Social Security. We're already seeing it now with the younger generations, Gen Z. What's the other
Gen
one?
X. What did you start over?
No, not Gen X. Don't you dare take shots.
Gen
at
Z,
Gen
Y.
Millennials.
Gen Y, Gen Z.
Millennials.
But then what happened? Did we start over again?
No, but
Gen
Oh, right.
We go back to
Gen A. We go Gen A.
My kids are Alpha. Yeah.
Alpha.
Oh, okay.
Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo.
We've already made it. Holy smokes, we already made it to Z. Anyway, as I was saying, Mary, the issue is when you have these younger generations who are just doing gigs.
Yeah.
For instance,
The
the gig economy.
Right.
Well, theory is they're not paying enough money into Social Security because they're not doing the 40-hour work week.
Right.
And all of a sudden, our Social Security is going to be underfunded because nobody is working.
Yeah, they're not ducking it. It's a different work environment.
It's a different approach.
Payment. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But what they don't realize is the generation before them and the generation before that and everything else is expecting every generation behind them to work
pay for it, right.
and to fund Social Security, just like we did for the generations in front of us.
Howie's millennial? What is he?
Yeah, Howie's a Gen.
What do you think about this?
He's a Gen Alpha, aren't you?
No,
he's not a
not
millennial. What are you? Gen Z? Gen X?
No, I'm technically I'm a millennial.
You're Gen
he's
X.
a millennial.
You're Gen X.
I'm Gen
I'm
X.
Boomer. Gen X.
I'm X.
Gen X, and then Gen Y. Who is Gen Y? And who's Gen Z?
Yeah, we don't know any.
So honestly,
We got some in the control room.
well, so in other words, our life doesn't improve any with or does it with more population other than economically speaking, or is productivity here also affected, or how are you feeling about all that?
Yeah, so the risk is that we enjoy population decline a little too much. I mean, things in Japan are great. The economy is staying roughly the same size. They're growing anemically, but there's less people, so there's more wealth per capita to enjoy. So it kind of feels good. Now, in the U.S., I'm going to pose that it's a little bit different because of you, Sully. The boomers are a problem, and what Greg was saying.
I'm barely a boomer. I'm like one more day, I would have been an X.
Okay, sorry. But the boomers really are a problem because they cost Social Security a little bit more because they're such a bigger generation. They make it harder on the system. They are holding all of their investment income. They're not downsizing their homes. So there will be a little bit of a bounce back when we see this glut of a larger generation than average, which the boomers are by far.
So
through the life cycle.
So I guess the question is, what are the solutions? I mean, what do you do? More kids?
Make
more babies? Is that it? I mean,
I
it?
want you guys to opine. I think there's 3 solutions, but they all have trade-offs, and I don't know really, what the best is. I think it's more philosophical. So first, have more kids. You can push families to create more, but we don't want to do that these days until you're wealthy enough. 2, immigration, political implications there. And then AI, but I've seen the Terminator movies. I don't know.
Yeah, we don't want that.
AI babies?
But you talk about that in terms of, go back to Henry Ford and the automation with building the car, and you go back to computers that took the place of data processors and stuff. I mean, this is just how life goes, and people still survive. It's almost better in my mind when you're going into an AI environment or a computerized environment or a driverless car environment, for example, that the population wanes a little bit. Now, I'm not suggesting that you do it on purpose. I'm suggesting that if that happened to happen, that can't be such a bad thing in these times, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, the idea is if you had 10 people doing a certain job and AI makes one person 10 times as efficient, okay, well, if the population declines by 90%, you're good. I mean, if you want to stay the same.
Is anybody looking at this in our government saying, hey, let's do a government-sponsored Match.com and get more people together to make kids?
Yeah. Well, the UK and Japan have ministries of loneliness because it's such a problem. And they try to push Yeah, no.
That's my next
Is that like
album.
the weird movie,
The
The
Minister
Lobster?
of Loneliness.
Yep.
That's like the movie The Lobster. Did you see that?
Yeah, it's fantastic.
It's so good, but it reminds me of that. Trying to get people together.
Is there an economic outcome that would be? I mean, have they done models about what's perfection in terms of population? Because the Fed's job is literally to have maximum employment, stable pricing, and stable interest rates. Is there a population that gets too ridiculous here in the U.S.? Like, what are we, 300 million now? If we got to a billion or a half a billion, would that cause a stress to the system? On one hand, we have a ton of Social Security. We have a ton of money going in the system, paying a lot more people dodging taxes because we're not actually collecting any tax money. But is there a point of no return or a point of diminishing returns with respect to the solutions here and making more babies?
Well, that has to do more with how large societies can get and what the planet can support and all that. The UN has estimated that we top out at around 11 billion and then we start to slowly decline from there. But I economically speaking, it's better to just keep growing forever. Well, I mean, colonize Mars, moon bases and stuff. I mean, yeah, the U.S. will be crowded, but we have space for a century or two. I think.
Well, but now let me ask you this, because there's an argument that says inflation is our fault, and that's because during this post-COVID times, there was a supply-demand issue, the supply issue, but then we had this demand issue. More people equals more demand. Does more demand just necessarily automatically mean more inflation? If you can't keep up with that, because you're going to be top heavy for a while, where you got a lot of consumers on the bottom, age 0 through 6, that are not, or 0 through 16 that are not contributing yet. Is that? I mean, there's got to be a pain sort of period there if this actually, if your theory is right about making more kids is one of the solutions.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Luckily, we have a built up older population that hopefully supports them in aggregate. That was one of the advantages that the boomers had, or that the boomers gave to other generations, but they gave a lot of disadvantages too.
Hey, Howie, I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, but the boomers, you said, is one of the biggest generations, or is the biggest. Where are the others falling? Where is Gen X and Z? Who is the next biggest? Did we kind of die down and now we're building back up again?
No, we're not building back up again. We're growing only because of immigration, actually. So like I said, the U.S. rate is now about 1.6, 1.7 when you want it to be 2.1, that replacement rate. So that's a little bit too low. The next, it scales. So X is after boomers.
Yep.
Is after.
Yep.
Yeah. And then they're the next biggest, then millennials, then Y or
Y and Z.
Howie, let's switch gears here. Speaking of inflation, we talked about last week. Are we moving into a cycle here? You were worried about Japan a couple weeks ago. Are we moving into a cycle where we think that inflation is finally tamed and interest rates are going to be going in the right direction to where we can see a brighter 2025? Because we thought we'd have a brighter 2023. Thought we'd have a brighter 2024. It seems like we're actually closer here, right?
We are closer. We are approaching light at the end of the tunnel, but it's also, we're kind of out of the tunnel. If we're looking at just how the market's performing, every day is a new all-time high. If that's your metric, then fine, we're out of the tunnel. But as far as the inflation story, we're going to walk out a little bit slower than we thought. So the China thing that we've talked about a couple times, they're pushing an inflationary wave across the world. And then we cut 50. People are probably saying that was a little too fast. We should have done one cut, not two. So we'll keep cutting, but not as many cuts as quickly as we thought.
Are you feeling inflation, Greg? I mean, do you feel inflation?
I think in certain areas, yeah. But where I feel it is apparently not tracked in inflation, which is food.
Food and gas. Well, CPI.
Well, gas, it being in California.
CPI numbers, yeah. Are you feeling inflation?
I feel it, oh yeah. And travel a lot because I travel with the kids. So hotel rates.
Yeah.
Airfares are crazy. I just tried to change a flight and it was going to charge me $500 more per ticket per way to change it. So it's just too crazy.
The like you said, Howie, the economy was shut off like a light switch and it's coming back like a sunrise, little by little. And I don't know, and Howie, you can answer this before you get out of here. Is inflation alone enough to stimulate the economy? Because the economy is not just inflation. The economy is a number of things. And if inflation gets, let's say we get interest rates down to the 2s again or the 3s again, is that enough to get prices down and stuff? Because look, if interest rates don't necessarily reflect low prices. You know, I mean, the economy's doing pretty good now. We're still paying $4 for gas here in California, if not more. And we're supposed to be in the face of better inflation.
Yeah, I think some things are going to be very, very sticky. It's more about stopping the new increases than bringing it back down. That just doesn't happen historically, especially with things like food. Some things that will come down but won't for a long time are insurance rates, because those are tied directly to interest rates. It takes a couple quarters to flow back, but insurance of all kinds, home, owner's car.
More good news about insurance, right? Oh my God. Thanks, Howie. Appreciate it. We'll see you tomorrow. Howie Font, our chief analyst here. He'll be in town here in a couple of days. Hey. All right, much more Big Biz coming up now that we've completely bummed you out about the population and inflation. Time for an upbeat thing. See you in a minute. Big Biz Show, BigBizShow.com. 125 million TV homes strong right here in the U.S. Let's not forget American Forces Network in 175 countries and all the ships at sea. We are everywhere. I love this next guest, and I love this next topic. Of course, his name is Mike DePasquale, Chairman and CEO, BioKey International, BKYI, and it comes down to identity and access management and cybersecurity. But before we get to that, because Mike spent quite a bit of time talking about it the last time, and we're going to reintroduce the company in a second, but if you take a look at market cap on a company, you know what market cap is, Mayor?
No.
Market cap is the valuation of a public company. It's basically the amount of outstanding shares multiplied by the share price, okay? So when the share price doesn't coincide with what's happening with sales, or what's happening with the company, it's a big head scratcher sometimes. And with biometrics as a solution to cybersecurity, you'd think that this would be top of mind with every investor. And what's interesting is some of the dynamics going on. I bring you Mike DePasquale. Mike, that is an interesting question, isn't it? How this is a little bit disjointed here right this very second, with market dynamics and such in comparison to market cap.
Yeah, first of all, Sully, thank you for having me on the show again.
It's great to have you.
Do appreciate that. And, you know, I think, look, we don't control the market. None of us do. And certainly our company doesn't. However, all we can do and all any company can do is perform, meet or exceed the expectations that are set by them and outsiders, right, analysts and the likes, and just, you know, keep on satisfying customers and growing the business. And you're right, there's a disconnect for us right now, but it's so significant that it's almost kind of surreal. We're trading, as you spoke about market cap, we're trading about 25% of the value of 1 times trailing 12 months revenue, which is incredible in that in our space, in the security space, in particular in cybersecurity, where we operate in the authentication market, the multiples times, again, revenue are anywhere from 3 to, let's say, 12, depending upon the type of company, the size of the company, and so forth and so on. And so we are way off where we should be. But again, we don't control the market.
Exactly.
We don't drive the market. We can only do what we can do. And we've made a number of announcements. Well, no,
but not to interrupt, but you've done it. When you say we can only do what we can do, you've done it. Look at your press lately. I mean, you're marching the ball down the field nicely. I mean, you're doing everything you could possibly do.
We are. And you know, again, we also have longevity behind us. We've been in this business for nearly 25 years. So BioKey was founded in 1994. So we've been around the block for well over 25 years. We've been a public company for about 25 years. So, you know, if you look at our most recent press releases, in particular, and this is what I think is a testament to our technology and to our team, our people, and the support infrastructure that we put in place to support our customers globally, the fact that our larger customers have been customers for 10 plus years with us and are actually expanding their deployments with us. That says a lot about what we offer It says a lot about the continued innovation that we're bringing and delivering to the market. And it also says a lot about how sticky our product is. Once it's installed, once it's deployed, it becomes absolutely mission critical for that particular enterprise or government agency for access to all of their portals and information. So we're in a very, very good spot right now. And I believe the future will continue to be very, very bright for us. But again, you have to look back at the history of the company. You have to look back at the growth that we're starting to see, and we have seen over the last 2 to 3 years. And more importantly, again, you have to see that our existing customers are expanding their deployments, and we're signing new and innovative customers on as well. So we're really putting ourselves in my opinion, in a really good position to be wildly successful ahead.
Hey, Mike, let me ask you about the press release, the most recent press release about the cybersecurity conferences. Talk about that, because that was a big one, and it kind of puts you front and center as best practices at the same time as putting your company in a positive light. Talk about that one specifically.
Yeah, we're attending, in fact, started yesterday, we'll run through tomorrow, the ISC Squared conference, which is the Information Security Congress, where most of the higher level security resources, CISOs and the likes, and chief security officers attend. And it's a part educational conference, and it's also part a certification conference where there are all kinds of events that happen during the Congress, where these executives and managers and directors in security can get certified on specific technologies and specific services and support infrastructures to further their career. So it's kind of a combination event, wonderful for them to learn about all the new and latest and greatest techniques in security, and also a very, very good opportunity for a company like ours to present our innovation. And in particular, if you read the press release, you'll see that we're front and center with the latest technologies, including passkeys, and of course, biometrics, which provide a significant competitive differentiator for us versus our competitors.
Hey, Mike, actually, you brought that up. I had questions about passkey. I keep hearing that and seeing that. Is it the same as facial recognition, and is that all the same as biometrics? Can you break it down for me on what it all means?
Yeah, so biometrics are some physical characteristic that you have and that's unique to you. So it could be your facial features, it could be your fingerprint.
Yeah, a fingerprint.
It could be your palm, it could be your voice. So it's something, again, that you have that's unique to you and only you, with probabilities and percentages into the 99+% range. So that's biometrics. Passkeys, on the other hand, are I'll call it newer technology that's in play to replace passwords. And you keep hearing about passwordless, tokenless security. Well, replacing passwords or eliminating them is really the goal for almost every large enterprise on the planet today. And the large technology companies like Microsoft, Google, and the likes, Oracle, are all driving, in that direction. And so what passkeys are is they're a technology, an authentication technology that's based on private key interchange. And so it's a key that's stored, that's public, meaning that anyone can access it. Any one of these technology infrastructures can access it, but it's paired with a private key that you have. So it might be a key on your device, on your phone, on your computer, or it could be some physical key that you plug into your computer, and they have to match in order to authenticate yourself.
His name is Mike DePasquale. Of course, he is the chairman and CEO of BioKey International. Mike, we can't ever get enough of you. I can't wait to have you come in studio and hang out with us a little bit. Once again, their website is bio-key.com. Of course, their stock symbol BKYI. Thanks so much, Mike. I appreciate it. More Big Biz coming up. Stand by. Big Biz Show, bigbizshow.com. Look who's in studio. Dan Negroni finds his way in, of course, speaker, CEO, coach, consultant, chief launch officer. And you got a really big stack of paper there. And I'm not talking about this stack. His book, of course, Chasing Relevance.
Let's have you.
Which should, but I'm reading upside down. It says Unlocking Gen Z at Work. Boy, that's right in your, did you write that?
I worked with a company,
okay,
Marley, that actually has data for 23 years on an assessment about the different generations and did 400,000 people survey. So, yeah, globally.
What is, so we're talking about generational differences.
Yes.
Right? And which you've been an expert in terms of behavior and work-based behavior for as long as I've known you.
Yeah.
And so to cut to the chase, what are the real takeaways here for you? When you see something like this, of course it's exciting and you're part of how the sausage is made, but what are the real takeaways?
So, I mean, if I'm being honest, when we wrote that book, we were kind of making it up as we went along.
Well, but you were the first one to start talking about it.
We got it right, and we started really training the generations on how to get along, and we were really looking at kind of what were the behaviors and attitudes. And then comes along, which has kind of reinvigorated me and gotten me excited again about it, is this study over 23 years about how the different generations behave and their attitudes to work.
Changed over the last 23 years. So 23 years ago it was one way, but now all the technology and, communicating through texting, it's all so different now.
Yeah,
right?
So the big things.
Yeah.
They're really, really big things, which you see, like I see when I'm being Professor Dan in the classroom. I see in the classroom, and it validates really the study, which is there is a 53% decrease in trusting your strategic decisions.
Really?
53%, which is huge between the generations, so a boomer and a Gen Z. So 53% less likely to be strategic in their decision because, if you look at the study, they know how to go really deep, but they don't have any breadth. And so
is this a lack of execution experience?
I think it's a lack of teaching them how to think experience. Strategic thinking, which means you figure it out by yourself.
So is this go back to how they were raised in that generation, and were they coddled?
I was going to say mollycoddled.
I mean, is that the
those damn participation trophies strike?
Totally. Do they strike again?
I think the answer is we've protected them or wanted to protect the road for their journey instead of teaching them how to protect themselves for the road, and it's been a real challenge. And then bring in the screen. And so the screen has taken them away from thinking. They can figure out everything out immediately. They don't have to think. And so there's a 47% increase in wanting to depend on text. Like they don't want to even hear or see. They just want to read it, which I see in the classroom. Give me a guide. Tell me what to do.
Is that a comment? Two things. First of all, we consume media much differently than we have even a year ago.
Sure.
That's a moving target. But is that a comment, and the first data point here in terms of decrease in big picture strategic thinking, is that a comment on gut instincts? Is that a comment on...
Interesting. Second statistic is 60% increase in not trusting your gut or decrease in trusting your gut. 60%. Because they haven't been go figure it out. And they don't have to figure it out. They're waiting for someone to tell them what to do.
Well, let me say so. Okay, and I believe.
Well, and
you got 23 years to say, because I thought I have great instincts, but I don't know if I recognized my great instincts until I was probably in my 40s. I think it was the time on the crust of the earth, maybe part of it.
One difference: you were willing to try.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's
right? Because I know you well enough that you didn't sit back and say, "Okay, I'm not going to try this." You realized as you got smarter and older that maybe you weren't so bright when you were doing it, but you were still trying. And so they don't really initiate tasks. They like to do things kinesthetically, but they're so focused on external forces. So, right, the phone, and what everyone else thinks about them, that they don't trust their gut, and they haven't felt kind of strong enough internally, self-aware to just get out there. Now there are exceptions. Don't get me wrong. But as a generation, it's a problem.
You brought up text-based communication. They just want to read it. Does that mean they don't want to go face to face? They prefer not to talk on the phone? Go ahead.
I just had this example happen to me a couple days ago with my daughter who's applying to colleges, and she had a question, and I said, just call the admissions office. All the things that are telling us, all the webinars we're on to say, talk to your admissions person. She literally just froze over when I suggested to call. She was like, I don't know how to do that. I mean, they don't know how to articulate on the phone. Everything is just pushing the buttons.
47% increase in wanting to see it and read it, and 23% decrease in wanting to talk about it. Or to hear it. Yeah. Because they don't even do this, right? Yeah. If they had a show, there'd probably be one of them or two. Right?
They don't
they're called podcasts. And they're
Snapchatting each other.
But you know what's interesting is this is a pet peeve of mine. I tell my team, I tell everyone I know, stop countering their objections before they object. And what I mean by that is, well, I don't want to call them. They're probably busy. Yeah. Well, then they're going to tell you they're busy. They're not going to pick up the phone. Okay. Or it's almost like I'm not going to take that chance for fear of putting them out somehow. Yep. Well, wait a second. We're going to protect ourselves. Yeah. And if they can't answer, they won't answer. That's an answer in and of itself.
I tell that to all my clients. You know, we do this on-demand coaching, which is really where the rubber meets the road. They call, we get a reframe, we have it in action. And so many of them, like probably 80% of them, don't call because they think they're going to bother you. I'm like, I won't pick up my phone if you're bothering me. Yeah. Right? Like,
we have it on silent.
Do you find your kids, and yours are young enough, but maybe so, to be perfectionists? Like they overanalyze, maybe paralysis by analysis?
I mean, your experience is, it goes by the study all the time, is they want to go deep. They want to really error correct everything. They want to make sure it's all following the rules. And, they want a guide, and they don't want to figure it out. And it's a challenge. All this research on it, Coddling of the American Mind, The Anxious Generation, 2 books by Jonathan Haidt. It shows us what's happened when the screen came out in 2010.
Mm-hmm. What was your biggest surprise by being a part of this and reading the end?
Well, my biggest delight, and I guess it was a surprise, was we can fix it. Like, we can help it. If we know what the challenges are, we can double down on the way we coach them.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And so, I mean,
because the 800-pound gorilla in the room is, how do you build a high-performance team?
It's like in class every time when I'm saying, what am I going to tell you to do? And they say, you're going to tell us to figure it out. I'm like, no. What's the tool that you use? And they're so accustomed just being told, figure it out, or you're wrong or you're right, instead of saying, what's the tool I'm going to use? Oh, they'll, like 5 people later, oh, we're going to ask questions. Mm-hmm. Oh, we're going to do our research. We're going to do our homework. We're going to actually lean in and listen and connect. Yeah, those are the things that we need to teach them how to do.
Professor Dan, you and I used to call them role models. Now they're called influencers. But are influencers really role models?
I just got this disgusting look on my face.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Right.
I guess it depends on who the influencer is, right?
Influencers, they're self-proclaimed.
Well, but the influencer also has to do with a number. This is an influencer because they got this many followers, this many whatever. Mm-hmm. Role models were people that I wanted to assimilate their beliefs, morals. I wanted to be like them. Is there a disconnect there, or do they even exist?
Here's what I would say about both those things. Role models and influencers, they're just part of the input. Mm-hmm. What you really need to find is someone who cares enough about you to coach you or mentor you, and you have to find enough kind of self-will to want to coach yourself. And like you said, you got to pick up the phone. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You got to make the call.
Yeah. What I have a fear of is all of the people in sales. Greg, Greg and I met when I was in the radio business. Greg was in the radio business. You were frontline sales in advertising, and your phone was your tool. Could you imagine just texting and being able to being as successful as you are now? No. Would that even work? What it makes?
Well, so I think that's an interesting thing. I saw Scott Galloway. For anyone who doesn't know him, he's a professor at NYU, and he's a really big thought leader. And he talks about this, and he was saying this morning, if you are a salesperson, like you grew up as a cold caller, it's the number one skill you can learn, because all you're doing is trying to connect with people, and it is hardcore. Yeah. Right? Like, still, both my boys are sales guys. They have to make 100 calls a day.
Well, I remember
30 emails a day.
I remember when I was selling, and they put a box of paper clips here. So you got to empty this box of paper clips. Every call you put a box to take a paper clip out. You got to empty that box today. And it was you were forced to have that personal interaction. So Dan, turning the page here, how can people get a hold of you and find you?
Yeah, I think
where are you speaking?
Hopefully, we're speaking now all over about this. We've just been getting booked like crazy on the particular study because what we're trying to do is figure out how to teach people to deal with the challenge. And there's science behind this, and there's actually an AI-based coaching system where you can put in, how would I approach Sully? Mm-hmm. How would Sully and I deal with conflict? Not that we would ever have conflict. I
don't think we ever have.
How would I ask? No. How would I ask Sully for a raise? Right?
Don't.
Don't. Right? Don't. But
let him come to you.
Let him come to you.
Dan Negroni is his name, of course. Go to dannegroni.com. Pick up a copy of this book, Chasing Relevance, if you can hold it. It's literally, feel this book.
It's a great book. Holy
the heaviest. I don't know what you did.
Did you make this out of lead? What is this?
We got a very thick paper.
When's number 2 coming?
Yeah.
Dan,
it's coming.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it.
We got
that is book number 2.
Yeah, right?
There's book number 2 right there. What's more to come? Stand by. Big Biz Show's on the air. Big Biz Show. What a show we got today.
Yeah.
That was good. And guess what?
Hey.
We'll be back once again. The name of the book, of course, on Holding Up. I'll Be Back, written by our good friend Shep Hyken. Shep Hyken, of course, is the Chief Amazement Officer at Shepard Presentations. He is a keynote speaker, a famous one at that. Got to meet him when I was introduced to keynote speaking. In 2017, I was introduced to Shep. You've had such an impact on us on the show that we got to get you back. We got to get you in studio at some point, if for no other reason, for you to play with the band.
I want to do that, and thank you very much. I can hear you guys now. I was panicking. I can't hear these guys.
Hey,
what are they saying? Hey, you look good, man.
Thank you, man. You know, it's stress.
And cheeseburgers.
You see this? I had a full head of hair 2 years ago.
I know you did. I met you.
Stress.
You look like Elvis when I met you. Hey, let's talk about trust. As you pointed out on your talking points here today, trust expert David Horsager says everything of value is built on trust. You pay more for a trusted brand, and you'll pay more for a trusted keynote speaker. Expand on that for us.
Yeah. So trust is it. I mean, here's what we need. I think any company, you know the old saying, people want to do business with people they know, like, and trust. Mm-hmm. Well, the knowing and liking is easy, especially in North America compared to other countries. It's like almost automatic. If I present a good image, you're going to start to like, I kind of like these guys.
Yeah.
But trust is a different story. It has to happen over time. It's an emotional connection. And when you create the trust, you create this bond, and people say, why would I consider doing business with someone else? That's why Horsager's work, who I've been following forever, since he started in this business, he says, like you said, a lack of trust is your biggest expense. If you don't have customers that trust the company that you work for, you are at risk of losing that customer to a competitor.
You know, and they say, and I think I learned this from you.
Well,
easier to keep, not that. Easier to keep a customer than get a new customer. That's always
something like that.
Yes, that's true.
You say?
Yeah, it's true.
I'll take credit for that.
Is that true?
I didn't say it, but maybe you learned it from me.
Greg could sell ice cubes to a person that lives in the North Pole. So I think it was one of your adages, because you had a lot of existing clientele that you spent a lot of time on, and people trusted you.
Trust and respect, the two cornerstones of a long-term relationship.
Now let me ask you this though: you were selling talk radio. You were selling music radio. Was it just talk radio, if I'm not mistaken? Right. Well, the most untrustworthy people sometimes are the people that are on the air yapping into a microphone.
The talking heads is what we call it.
Right. So what you were selling was the amount of listeners that person. You weren't necessarily selling me personally.
The audience.
Sometimes you were, but I mean overall.
The audience.
Okay. Mm-hmm. How do you gain trust in an untrustworthy business? And I'm not talking media here. I'm talking about. Let's talk about the social media space. Let's talk about the entertainment space. And yet there's so many sales. There's so much customer service around that because you've got this active audience. But they are kind of cheesy, sleazy businesses. How do you get around some of that stuff? Because look no further.
I don't know if they're all cheesy and sleazy, But first of all, the whole idea is the predictable experience that you want to have. If you give it to me right the first time, and then the next time it's not as good as it was before, I don't know what I'm going to get the third time. But if the second and third time are consistent with what my expectations and what I like to, the type of service and experience I like to have, it's great. If I am following a particular director and I love his work or her work, and I love going to their movies, and I go to a couple of them and they're great, and the third one not so good.
Yeah.
I'll try the fourth one. Fourth one not so good. I'm not going to trust the fifth one's going to be much better.
Hey, Shep. So what's interesting here is, I know that during the COVID economy, we didn't have human capital when we started opening up the economy. People didn't want to go back to work sometimes. People, we had trouble getting people in places like even clerks at a DMV, for example, or people at the Starbucks counter.
Who wants to work at the DMV?
Well, but the point is, but the point is, you had trouble with customer service everywhere because you were just putting bodies in some positions.
Right.
Do you think, in your opinion, let me ask you first, has customer service improved?
It's
lately
declined. I'll give you one of the ones. The one that just popped in my mind is Nordstrom, because that
used to be the thing.
That was the place that was the benchmark for customer service and shopping for females.
Definitely.
Males too. I mean, I don't know why I just said females, but now I've talked about this with many people. You can't find a person to help you. If you do, they have an attitude. It's just very strange, and they used to be the benchmark. So I can only point to COVID and that whole changeover.
What about you, Greg?
I don't shop at Nordstrom.
I don't either. Me neither.
No.
But
you look like a Nordstrom kind of guy.
But you have little kids, and you deal with customer service as much as anybody. Is it about the same as it always was for you?
I think so. Yeah.
I think what's interesting for me is what kills me. And it does have something to do with me trusting a business, is when the person at the front confuses their own popularity with the popularity of the business. The reason is, I'm there because I like how you make cheese popcorn, not because you're the guy selling me the cheese popcorn. And it bothers me that the business would hire someone and it comes back to the thing I always talk to you about, the disconnect between what they think they're hiring and what is actually going to the public. That's a trust thing.
Well, there's a bigger disconnect. And let me read you this stat that comes from PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC. 90% of executives think customers highly trust their companies. However, only 30% actually do.
Oh my God.
That's a 60% gap in
crazy.
perception. And you got to narrow that gap or else... I mean, it's a disaster waiting to happen.
Shep, you talk to business leaders all the time. You do this for a living. They're your clients.
Yes.
They're your audience. They're your keynote speaking Q&A at the end of the day. And why do you think this persists? Because I go back to the people at the top of the hotel chain think they know what's going on in the restaurant, in the coffee shop, but they don't, right? And why do you think there continues to be a disconnect? Is it just a flat-out communication? Because our communication access is better than ever.
Communication. They're not getting the real information from the front line. If they are getting it, they're discounting some of it. Number two, they need to get out of their offices and down to that restaurant. They need to get out of their office and out in the field. Anheuser-Busch, and I wrote about this in my first book in the late 1980s. I wrote about this program where executives once a quarter had to go out with a truck salesman and go actually talk to people who owned grocery stores and bought their product or owned a bar or a restaurant so that they could see what's really happening in the field. And all that does is, number one, it endears the company to the customer because, hey, I just met the executive. Number two, it lets that executive know this is what I'm seeing out there in the field. And it eliminates that disconnect.
Get in San Diego. What do you get you in here? Customer experience. Driving growth tomorrow, and of course he'll be back because that's what his book says. All right, more Big Biz Show coming up. No, actually, is that it? Is that it for us? We're on a show. We're on a show.
We should keep going.
Let's just keep going.
Let's do more
in perpetuity.
Let's go to Nordstrom.
See you guys tomorrow. Big Biz Show.